this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made for a Punched Out Thursday to Die For. And to create this layout, I used a sketch from 30 Days of Sketches Series 9, and I didn't even realize it until I was creating the introduction to this video. This sketch was made by our very own Ronnie Sue Scrapper. So I am using this sketch to create this layout, and I'm using some Pinkfresh Studio papers. I'm using a collection called My Favorite Story, and then I also add in a few solid papers from my stash. The pink paper in the background, that is a really old paper that I had with all of my pink pattern papers. It is a Paper Pizzazz paper. I don't know if you remember that brand. And then the bluish green paper, that is a textured piece of cardstock. And then the floral is a pattern paper from the My Favorite Story collection. The pink piece of paper was extremely lightweight, so I mounted it on a piece of cardstock that I had in my stash. In the sketch, the circle was the pattern paper and the background was the solid paper, but I switched that around because I wanted to add a lot of embellishments on that circle, and I didn't want them to get lost in the pattern paper behind them. I used my large Creative Memories circle cutter, and I cut out a large circle and then a slightly larger circle than that in green, and then that way I would have the green paper matting the pink circle. And then I attach that down right to the center of the paper. I'm going to use 2 strips of photos that were from a photo booth at a party my daughter Julia went to. I wanted the strips of photos to stand out, so I decided to map them on the blue paper, which is the darkest paper in this collection. I wanted to include some journaling. I'll have to have my daughter do the journaling because I wasn't at the party, but I wanted to put it on a tag, so I wanted to make a little pocket for behind one of the photo strips that I could slip the tag in and out of. On this thick piece of white cardstock, I measured how wide the photo strip was, and I made the center area a little bit smaller. I left room for tabs on either side, and then I cut the strip a little bit longer than the photo strip so I would be able to create a tag that I could fold up. So now I'm making slits in the corners, and then I'm mitering the corners, and this just makes kind of a little envelope. And then I'm going to layer another piece of paper on top of it to hold the whole thing together. And instead of putting a foam behind the photo now, I'll have this cardboard pocket, and this will create a little bit of dimension for the photo. I use the same thick white cardstock to cut a tag that will go into that pocket that's behind the photo. Before I attach everything together, I decided to reinforce the photo a little bit by adding another piece of the thick white cardstock right behind the photo. For vacation layouts, I usually have the journaling on a separate page, but for an everyday layout like this, I think it's really important to include at least some journaling. So that's why I like the idea of having the tag. I don't have to worry about leaving room for the journaling on the page. But since there is a designated spot for it, I know that I'll take the time to do it. I trimmed the piece of paper inside the pocket down a little bit, and I used a corner rounder punch to round the corners. And now I'm going to attach both of these photos down to the layout. I ended up with the photo strip on the right higher than the photo strip on the left, but I believe that I made that switch off camera. Before I started embellishing the layout, I wanted to add a title. I'm using some close to my heart dies that I recently purchased at a scrapbooking convention. I cut each of the letters out in white and in pattern paper, and I'm using the white behind the pattern paper, just offsetting the two a little bit, just to help the title be a little bit more visible against the pink background paper I'm going to be putting the title on. I looked online for titles that had to do with parties, and I found a couple of titles. A lot of them said diva in them, but then I saw this one, Just Us Girls, and I thought that this went well with the photos. Once I had all the letters attached to each other, I place them on the layout and I attach them down, and I do that off camera because it takes me a very long time to line the letters up and get them just where I want them. Now I'm working on the tag again. I wanted to add a little color to the top of the tag, so I attached some green paper to the top, and then I was thinking that I should punch a hole, so I got out my old-fashioned eyelet setter punch, and I'm using that to punch a hole. When I do that, the whole table shakes in the camera, so I cut that out, but it took me a little bit of time to get through both of those layers of paper that are on that tag. Next, I used a We Are Memory Keepers punch, and I punched out a little ring or circle for the top of the tag. I wanted to add some yellow because there's no yellow on the whole photo cluster, so I cut a very thin piece of this yellow pattern paper and I attached it down to the bottom of the green paper, and then I trimmed off the yellow paper on either side. Now all of the main elements are on the page and I can start embellishing. I was thinking that these bows were really pretty, so I would assemble one and attach it to the layout. These are from Pinkfresh Studio, and these coordinate with the collection that I'm using, which is My Favorite Story. I assembled the bow, and I love these bows. They're just the right size to add to a layout. Sometimes I think that bows can be a little bit too big, but I think this one is just perfect in size, and I thought that it would look nice right under the word girls. Now I'm adding some Prima flowers to the layout. I had this set of flowers and I thought that it matched really well with the colors in the Pinkfresh Studio collection. So I'm using those flowers on the top left-hand corner of the layout, and then I'm also going to make another cluster in the lower right-hand corner and just a little mini cluster to the left of the word us. And often I add mixed media to these flowers. I'll add some white gesso or some diamond dust. But for this layout, I wanted it to have a very clean look, so I just left the flowers as is. I also used some punches in my stash to create some branches and some very, very tiny flowers. The branches were created using a Martha Stewart punch, and those tiny flowers were created using an EK Success punch. For the branches, I used the same paper that I used on the background of the layout, and then I also used a slightly lighter pattern paper from the collection, and I like the idea of having those two different colors of branches. When I had all of the flowers where I wanted them, I used some gel glue and I glued them down to the layout. I usually use heavy-duty gel medium on flowers like these, but these are kind of on the smaller side when it comes to Prima flowers, so I thought that the gel glue would be enough to hold them down to the paper. I like the way the clusters of flowers looked, but I thought that it would be nice to add a little touch of yellow to the clusters, and that's why I punched out those flowers on the left. Before I put those on the page, I'm going to use some Pinkfresh Studio jewels. I use the light pink and the medium pink that they have in this set. And then for an adhesive, I use Glossy Accents. I think that is the best adhesive I know of anyway to attach jewels and pearls and things like that down to paper. In these containers of jewels, there are several different sizes, and I'm using the smallest size in the center of each of these flowers. And I think this is just a really quick way to create little accents for the page. It was interesting. The light pink and the dark pink look very different when they're inside their containers, but with just one jewel on the center of the yellow flower, I didn't think there was a big difference between the two colors once they were attached down to the flowers. Once the adhesive was dry, I spread the flowers on the layout. I used these very inexpensive tweezers that I got from the drugstore to help me pick them up and place them mainly on the two large clusters. I did include one small flower on the small cluster that's right next to the word us in the title. I really like these Pinkfresh Studio jewels. They are definitely better quality than some of the jewels I've gotten in the craft store. That's just my personal experience. I didn't really appreciate how pretty they were until I saw them in person. And once I have all of the flowers spread around on the layout, I go back in with some gel glue and I attach all of them down to the layout. And although I'm a huge fan of Prima flowers, absolutely love them, I would like to try to make some flowers using my dies by stacking up some different size flower dies. That's something that I would like to try in the future. I wanted to add something to the tag. I decided to add some ribbon and to tie it in a bow. I used some light pink ribbon that was in my stash, and then I just tied it until I liked the way it looked, and then I cut back some of the extra ribbon. Then I slid that card back behind the photo strip, and now I'm adding a little puffy sticker that says a lovely day. I still had those Pinkfresh Studio jewels handy, so I was thinking of putting a large one in the center of the bow, and I liked the way that looked, so I glued it down. And now I'm layering a very tiny puffy heart on top of that sentiment, and I like the way that that tiny heart looks there. I like bringing some dark blue to that spot in the layout. I added a jewel to the top of the bow on the tag, and that completes this layout. Here are some close-ups. Thank you so much to Ronnie Sue for her very inspirational sketch. She was inspiring me, and I didn't even know that it was her. Please check out her video and then the videos of all the other ladies who take part in A Punched Out Thursday to Die For. We have Sonia, Dorothy, Kathy, and Kathy. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you'll come back again next Thursday for another Punched Out Thursday to Die For. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.